Director and Head of Research at Red Cloud Securities. We continue on our afternoon session today with Fission Uranium. We welcome Ross McElroy, President, CEO, Chief Geologist, Director, fisherman, all-around good guy. Fission is advancing its large, shallow, high-grade triple R deposit in the southwest Athabasca towards feasibility study. So Ross, you've got about 15 minutes here, then we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A at the end of the session. So attendees, please hit the Q&A link button if you've got any questions.
Thank you very much, David. It's a real pleasure here to be able to speak this afternoon and be able to update people on Fission Uranium and the PLS property. There we go. So just give the warning in case you happen to hear some forward-looking statements here. I do encourage people to read through this disclaimer page. So why do we think that the PLS project is the right time and the right project for development? So here's a number of key points, and I think you've heard this recurring theme throughout many of the great presentations that you've listened to earlier. But first of all, start off with the strengthened uranium sector. I think the last several months in particular have really shown that the new attention to the uranium sector. We are seeing higher uranium prices, but I think more importantly is we're getting more attention overall to the need for nuclear energy and the clean green energy. I think the prices should continue to rise, and probably substantially so, and hopefully over the next year or two we'll see terrific increases in the price. World-class uranium district. I think you've heard that also on several talks. Saskatchewan consistently ranked in the upper tier of mining investment jurisdictions in the world. In fact, I think the Mining Journal rated Saskatchewan as the #1 jurisdiction overall. Particularly important too for uranium, because even in some good mining jurisdictions, uranium may be out of favor, but Saskatchewan has the best, blessed with the best deposits in the world, and then backed with a regulatory environment that actually allows development. Fission, we've created a new team. I guess we've transitioned from being essentially what's been an explorer, an advanced explorer, to now a new development focus in the company, moving the triple R deposit forward through feasibility. And the one thing that we've noted in the pre-feasibility that we completed in 2019, we outlined an underground mine development scenario, but it promises to be one of the lowest cost operators out there. And I think you've seen that with other high-grade basement-hosted deposits that, in the Athabasca. They're high-grade. You tend to get very low operating costs. And for us, I think we're blessed because the deposit is so near surface. So these are some of the factors that would make it one of the lower cost production. A very clear path forward. Again, jurisdiction-wise, it's a fairly straightforward process to permit your project and move it into ultimate production. I think it really relies on great data collection, which we've been doing over the several years, and also understanding the permitting environmental processes. And so we've built a team that has significant experience in that area. And I'd say, if we compare ourselves to other peers in the basin, I think we still have a little bit of room to go before we're getting the same sort of valuation on a per pound basis as some of our other peers with similar type projects. And we are continuing to close that gap, but I do think that is an obvious point for investors to take a look at, because I do think that gap will close, and we'll start seeing higher valuation on a per pound basis for the triple R deposit. Just a quick comment on share structure. We're trading around our 52-week highs. In fact, at 69 cents, which we hit a couple of weeks ago, that was a multi-year high for Fission. We hadn't seen that since 2018. So, obviously the sector is improving and the health of the company is improving. We have about $60 million in cash right now. Institutional ownership is about 40%, and retail sits at around 60%. So what sort of changed for us in the last year? Well, I've already mentioned quickly about the improved uranium sector. Having a strengthened treasury, of course, is all important as we start moving forward and about to advance on our feasibility study. So we just this week closed on $34.5 million. So that's what we're now sitting with, just under $60 million in the treasury. We have put a lot of emphasis into developing our team. I've hired a new VP project development, a mine engineer with several years experience, including in some of the best uranium deposits in the world, the Cameco McArthur River, for example. Gary was the superintendent for McArthur River. But we've also built up our skill in permitting in the local community and Indigenous relations areas too. Feasibility work will start moving forward in 2021. In fact, this summer, we'll start getting a kickoff on the feasibility study. And I'd say the other major advancement is advancing relationships with rights holders and stakeholders in the group. You'll notice about a month ago, we signed an engagement and capacity agreement with the Clearwater River Dene Nation. It's basically a supportive agreement. They're one of several important First Nation and Métis groups. And so it's important for us to start building those sort of relationships. But this is our first agreement with such a group, and I think it's a great tool for us to be able to continue to advance the project forward. So just quickly talking about Saskatchewan, as I mentioned, a very to me it's the best jurisdiction in the world. Highly ranked. And the thing that separates Saskatchewan apart too, and you've heard this in other presentations, the grades of the deposits are orders of magnitude higher than what you'll find globally. They're basically 10 to 20 times the global average grade would be your average grade of a Athabasca uranium deposit. So really, really important. And this is what's kept Canada as one of the top global suppliers of uranium, and has been for decades now, and I think it will continue. And in fact, it'll probably be the go-to jurisdiction of all as we move forward. So here's a snapshot of the Athabasca Basin. I'd say the last 50 years of development have been really focused on the eastern side, with the discoveries back in the the 60s of the Key Lake and Rabbit Lake areas, and of course a number of world-class deposits. Including the two producing assets, I guess we'll call them, McArthur River and Cigar Lake. McArthur, as Grant was talking a little earlier, is currently suspended, and that's basically waiting for the price to recover, I think, on uranium. But they do have a lot left in that ore body in Cigar Lake. But I would say that if you want to start paying attention to the southwest side of the basin, and you heard a great talk earlier from Lee talking about the Next Gen Zero deposit, and we're right on the same trend. In fact, the two deposits between Arrow and Triple R are sitting about 3 kilometers apart, and just between those two deposits alone, you're looking at resources that have been discovered in that area of over 500 million pounds of uranium. And of course, there's a lot more. There's some exciting discoveries up along trend, the Pure Point discovery, but then also you have the Shea Creek deposit. Anyways, I guess the point I would say is that the next generation of mines to be developed, I think, will start coming out of the southwest side, and that's really where we're sitting. In fact, the PLS project is just sitting outside of the basin margin. And that kind of gets to this map. This is a map an image showing a number of the high-grade uranium deposits associated with the Athabasca Basin. The first generation of deposits were what you'd call unconformity, and there's some phenomenal deposits at the unconformity, right at the transition zone between the Athabasca sandstone and the basement rock below. But I think what we have an advantage in having a basement hosted rock, because you're in much more competent rock. In fact, we'd sit just outside of the Athabasca Basin margin. In basement rock, you still have the same high grade ore, Typically, less deleterious elements, arsenic and selenium are negligible, and that's the case in our deposit and typical in other basement-hosted deposits. The real advantage that we have over most other basement-hosted deposits is just the closeness to surface. So I think, as you start getting closer to surface, you really do eliminate a lot of technical risk that's associated with developing deposits much deeper at depth. So that is one advantage that we do see on the Triple R. You're looking at a cross section, basically a long section along the length of the deposit. What this is a Triple R deposit. It's made up of 5 high-grade mineralized zones. The economic studies to date so far have been on the 00 zone, which was a discovery zone, and then the much bigger R780 East zone. Those are the 2 zones that have been part of the pre-feasibility study, and they've been all the economic study. The other zones, the 1515, the 840, and the 1620, have been discovered much later in the process. They all have the same sort of grade profile. All 5 zones basically have the same average grade, very close to it. It's just a matter of size. And I think that the next most important zone that we have would be the R840 West zone. Our intent is this year to do some more drilling on the 840 West to take the category of mineralization up from inferred to indicated, and then we will be able to bring that deposit into the feasibility resource that we're using as we move forward in 2021 and 22. So substantial growth potential by the inclusion of the 840 West zone, and then the other ones we'll probably start tackling in 2022, the 1515 West and the 1620 on the other side of the strike length. But all 5 zones obviously have the potential to be contributors to the overall mine plan. But right now, currently the 780 and the 00 make up the pre-fees, but look for the addition of 840 as we move forward through this calendar year. These are just some of the quick highlights that we saw out of the pre-feasibility study completed in 2019. So I already mentioned it promises to be a very low operating cost. We're looking at just over $7 a pound U3O8. Short construction time, around 3 years. With an underground scenario, originally we had conceived of this as a potentially an open pit migrating to underground. We re-looked at the project, and it makes a lot more sense just to develop this as an underground only scenario. With that, we have a minimal environmental footprint, greater support at the local level as well for that. And in fact, higher bottom line economics, higher IRR, and higher NPV as well. So the Triple R deposit moving forward as an underground development story. So we're looking at a comparison here. As I mentioned, the Athabasca Basin gives you some of the lowest cost operators out there. And this just sort of gives you an idea where the PLS project sits in that. So at the pre-feasibility, this is now converting over to Canadian dollars, $9.57 a pound, compared with Arrow, very close. They were $7.58 in their feasibility study. And so you can see we're on par with some of the best projects on the operating side in the basin. I mentioned too the valuation on a per pound basis. You see that we're still have about a little bit of ground to go to catch up to peers with similar types of deposits on a per pound basis. And I think that we have significantly closed that gap. And I think as we continue advancing the project, we'll continue to close that. Some key milestones over the next 5 or 6 years. We begin feasibility this year. At the end of it, we'll be submitting the project for EIS, and that'll probably happen in 2023. Construction decision by 26. That could make the PLS project a producing asset towards the end of the decade. Just outlined another way to look at it. This is a bar graph showing you these major advancements. We think feasibility will be about a 12 to 18 month process. The permitting and social issues, that'll continue through the end of EIS. And then at the very bottom here, you'll see that we are doing some resource definition drilling. That bulk of that is happening this calendar year with the drilling we completed this winter in the 780, and then also the 840 West Zone, which will be starting this summer. In fact, probably in about a month or so. I've still got a couple of minutes here, I think, or a minute. So just to quickly highlight, this will be the area that we're drilling on the 840 West Zone. That's where 23 holes will be should be starting this summer. And then just a quick mention here on the ESG side. So Fission is very committed to responsible development, environmental, and this is something about all of the Athabasca uranium deposits, by the way. The high grade and small footprint, I think, makes them a class above other development stories in the world. So you have much smaller ground in order to move the same amount of pounds, and that's very true in our project as well as others in the basin. We do take the social respect quite seriously, and as I've already mentioned, our agreement that we just signed with CRDN, and then of course strong board of directors in governance and management with Fission now as we move forward as a development company. So I think with that, that'll be a good introduction to Fission, and happy to take on some of the questions that might be out there.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, Ross. Do you see any opportunity here to work with NextGen to create a sort of a combined process plant rather than building two small mills so close together?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take too much to look and see these two deposits are sitting about 3 kilometers apart. They're very, very close. I think they have a lot of shared characteristics. The geology is probably very similar. I think the metallurgy is likely very similar. There's definitely some opportunities, and we're open to doing it. We don't have a formal agreement in place right now between the two companies, but there's some very, very, very obvious synergies there. I would love to see the area have one common mill. There's more than that. There's shared roads, shared, I mean, you name it, power. Any way you look at it, the projects I think could benefit by having some sort of a shared thing. So we'll be actively looking at trying to see how we can combine that.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about ESG and small footprint being attractive. So does that mean your feasibility study is going to be looking at the underground option only, or is open pit still an option, or at least an option for some of the deposits on land to the west?
No, really this whole project right now, we're looking at it strictly as an underground development story. Because it's so near surface, we had initially envisioned having an open pit, but no, I think the underground just won out on every way we looked at it, and so that's the way to develop this project going forward. But I just think it's a really important thing to look at for all of the Athabasca deposits, because they all are a lot of uranium in small areas. I'd say just the very nature of them right there compared to other deposits, lower grade, some of the bigger footprint stories out there. It's just the Athabasca just represents a great opportunity for developing, having small minimal footprint anyways.
And then, how much focus are you going to give to exploration on some of those zones to the west, or maybe even finding new zones along trend?
Well, yeah, there's some, this property is quite large, and I'd say that we've probably we've really systematically explored maybe 10% of it. Overall, there's a lot of prospective trends to go. Right now, we're focused at being a development company. Our eye on the ball here is to move the RRR forward through to get it to the next phase, and successfully through feasibility and all the permitting necessary to take this to production. However, there's a great deal of exploration potential, and we've got, I'd say one of the best exploration teams out there, and the guys will be chomping at the bit to go test other targets on the property. It's a truly exceptional piece of land, and yeah, we'd love to get back and explore, but I'd say for this next calendar year, it's really going to be focused on development of the RRR.
Okay, and then just very quickly here, last question, CGN, do you have any offtakes with them, or, have they agreed to come and fund part of the mine, or?
Yeah, so we did made the agreement with CGN back in, they're the Chinese state-owned utility. We did the agreement with them back in 2016. They have an offtake agreement with us for 20% of the production, which they would pay market prices for, based on spot. There's no obligation to actually to provide uranium. It's whatever you're producing, they have access to 20% of it. There is an annual optionality to it as well, that they can increase it, so it can have up to 35%. But I think CGN are a great supporter of the project. I'm pretty sure they're long-term partners in the project, and I think they'll continue to be very supportive. And obviously, they'll want to see the project develop. They have a real need for uranium and their incredible buildup of reactors in China. It's something else, and they're one of the major players, so I think very supportive.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ross. It's a pleasure to talk.